The Monolith of Fate is an endgame system in Last Epoch. It's something you encounter when you first enter the End of Time, and technically there's nothing stopping you from going into it right then and there. For more information on why it might not be a good idea, do be sure to check out my tips and tricks video right after this one. When you are ready to start the Monolith of Fate, you begin your journey here, with the Fall of the Outcasts. After clicking on this large pillar, you're taken into the Echo Web itself, where you get to select an individual echo. Different icons mean different things. So, an idol icon means the end reward is idols. If it has a coin icon, it drops gold. If there's a certain item icon, then it drops a unique or set version if the icon is gold or green respectively. If it's purple, then it drops an exalted version. The normal colored icons drop rare gear and generally aren't going to be too valuable or worth your time. The higher your corruption, the more rare outcomes appear, though we'll get into corruption a little bit later. Once you enter an echo, you have an objective. During early progression, you always want to rush to the objective. Don't worry about killing stuff along the way unless that stuff is actively a threat. After completing the objective, you get an amount of stability. This can be used to challenge the boss and further progress your monolith. While you do get bonus stability for killing enemies, that's not something to worry about right now. Echoes have a variety of objectives and can generally be classified as two different forms: the regular run-through map type and the kill waves of enemies type. The first is, quite honestly, much faster than the second, so try to avoid arena waves whenever possible. The further you get from the starting point of a monolith, or the higher your corruption, the more stability you get for each completion. This means that when you're farming one monolith and pushing it up higher and higher and higher, it can be really beneficial to go further out rather than constantly resetting it over and over again. The higher your corruption, the better the loot, but also do be aware that the higher your corruption, the more dangerous the enemies. That said, you don't need to worry too much about your corruption until you're getting into empowered monoliths. For now, you want to start with the Fall of the Outcasts. When you complete it by defeating the Abomination, you want to choose the right-hand path, which is the level 66 monolith. This is because those monoliths have much better blessings, which will give your character an actual power boost early on, as opposed to the left side that have loot boosts. Loot isn't exactly bad, but it does mean that you'll be slowed down a little bit since you don't have any access to free character damage or defenses. Now, as you continue through into ending the storm, during the second quest, you'll have an option to speak to the architect Liath. Your choices are number 1, to ignore her, let her be, which gets you the level 80 timeline, or 2, kill her, which unlocks the level 85 timeline after you defeat Lagan. You want to kill her and unlock the level 85 timeline because that gets you to the end in the most direct manner possible. The 3 level 90 monoliths at the end are your goal, because these are the 3 that you need to do to unlock empowered monoliths. In fact, technically, to unlock empowered monoliths, you don't need to do anything before that. You just need to complete these 3 bosses. Then, this magical device in the center of the area will light up. After that, empowered monoliths are unlocked. Congratulations, welcome to the true endgame. From here, you progress by advancing corruption, and you should do this in whichever monolith is most valuable to you at a given time, whether you need a blessing or some items dropped by the monolith. Next up, I'm going to have a little bit of a tips and tricks section. Before I do though, a quick reminder that if you're finding this helpful and you want more information about Last Epoch, do be sure to get subscribed, since I'm going to be releasing several videos in the near future, and if you're not subscribed, you could very well miss one. Plus, if there's content that you need help with in particular, do be sure to ask down in the comments below. And of course, a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for their continued support. More about how you can support at the end. For now, what are those tips and tricks? The first one is, if you're going up the right-hand path, do be sure to grab impactful blessings first. But don't worry too much about farming the perfect blessing, because it's far more efficient to farm when you have 200 corruption or higher, thus unlocking the option to select from 5 blessings rather than 4 every time you defeat a boss. Next up, there is a corruption catch-up mechanic in monoliths, so it's far more efficient to push one monolith really high, then use the corruption mechanic to catch everything else up, than to try to progress all of them evenly. If you're progressing all of them evenly, you're kind of doing the work 10 times, when you could instead only do it once. To progress corruption, you need to defeat the Shade Oribus. This resets your entire Echo Web, and the Oribus fight is highly random, so it can be quite difficult. When Oribus is very close to the start of a monolith, he'll often reduce your corruption rather than raise it. The farther out he gets, the more corruption that you get for defeating him. If you want to raise this corruption even higher, then consider killing the boss several times before fighting Oribus. Each time will give you a stack of Gaze of Oribus, so as long as you're able to defeat Oribus without dying, you'll get even more bonus corruption. To get more stability, again, move from the inside towards the outer edges as quickly as possible. The farther you are away from the start, the faster you gain stability, therefore the faster you gain corruption. Now certain monoliths give better rewards than others. This is related to farming specific items. For example, recently I've been looking for both a unique wand and a caster offhand. So I've been exclusively farming the Stolen Lance. This is because that's where those things drop. I'll randomly get the rewards for either offhand and wand or scepter and staff. If you want to know more about my build, don't worry, I'm going to be releasing a build video soon. Get subscribed for that, leave a like while you're down there. While the rewards do rise with corruption, so does the danger. There's always a modifier that gives enemies more health and damage that scales with corruption. Personally, I do suggest getting to around 300 corruption if you ever want to do a lot of farming. However, you have to be aware that this makes enemies significantly more dangerous than the default 100 corruption version. So if you don't think your build can handle it, maybe farm up a bit at a lower corruption first, and then swap it over. Now before I mentioned that there were some basic types of encounters you could run into. There's a few others like Vessel of Chaos or Vessel of Memory, which modify the monolith in new and unique ways. Vessel of Chaos randomizes all the rewards for uncompleted echoes, which means if you've gone through and made a huge branching path, you could always grab a Vessel of Chaos, indicated by the red symbol, and have yourself a good time as it rolls a bunch of random rewards which you could now access. On the other hand, if you know where a bunch of good rewards are, you can revert the completion using a Vessel of Memory. Vessel of Memory is also a great way to farm stability, but both of these do tend to be fairly rare, so don't be surprised if you aren't finding any. And that is my quick guide to monolith completion in Last Epoch, along with some advanced tips and tricks for when you want to farm monoliths. Using this, you should easily be able to progress into Last Epoch's endgame. At least, so long as your build can handle it. You can also combine all of these systems with multiplayer, if say your friend's playing a new character and you want to boost their progression up immediately. So long as one's build can handle it, technically there's nothing stopping you from jumping into empowered monoliths right at level 1. Except for, the fact that everything's definitely going to one-shot you, you won't be able to wear any gear, and oh yeah, there's a massive EXP penalty. So maybe you should wait for at least a few levels. But once your builds come together a bit, boosting is a great way to skip the grind on your second and third character. But do you have any other questions about empowered monoliths or how to progress? If so, be sure to leave them down in the comments below. Or maybe check out the guides over on Maxroll, because there's an extensive guide for every single monolith in the game. They're perfect for things I usually can't remember, like, which monolith do I go to get gloves again? Oh right, that one. It's in the guide. As always, that'll be down in the description below. Now before I go, a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for the continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make videos just like this one possible. If you're looking for something else to watch, I've recently been releasing a lot of Last Epoch content, which you can find up in the card or down in the description below. Alternatively, there's going to be a recommendation of something else to watch that's on screen right now. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.